when we start to say the radial artery, we must consider the fact that the radium is in the front, but there's something called deeper to the radium, deeper to the brachial muscle. So they are called profunda brachia, profundum is deep. And the profundus brachia will give us the branches to the radius, or to the thumb region, to the region which supplies the thumb part, coming off the radius.
When we talk about the brachial arteries, however, we first see that in the brachial proper branch, in the superficial region, in the brachial proper branch, we see the ulnar part, but in the deep branch, we see the profunda brachii, and we see radial branches to the thumb region, or say to the radius bone. On the ulnar bone, we have the supply of the brachial artery, because brachial artery will be coming off down and to the median plane to the ulna. Now we have a very interesting fact here. We have two collateral arteries. Collateral means running in the parallel. So we have the superior ulnar collateral artery and the inferior ulnar collateral artery. Now they will run parallel until they will give rise to something called recurrent arteries, or arteries which will turn back on themselves. The interesting fact about superior and inferior ulnar collateral artery, great thing about superior ulnar collateral and inferior ulnar collateral arteries is they run in parallel planes in the parallel, and they will give something called the recurrent arteries. Now the superior, interesting fact, see, the superior ulnar collateral will give to posterior ulnar recurrent. Why? Because it's turning back on itself. But the inferior ulnar collateral will give to the anterior. Now inferior should not be giving the anterior branch or the anterior ulnar recurrent branch, but when we understand the recurrent word means to turn back on itself, then we understand that the inferior ulnar collateral, yes, inferior ulnar collateral will give rise to the anterior ulnar recurrent. When we start to talk about the arteries found in the deeper region of the brachial artery, we see that they are responsible for the radial blood supply, or the arteries which will go to the radius. So we will say the radial collateral branch. Now we have one more very important branch coming off of profunda brachii, or the artery found in the deeper region of the brachial artery. They are called the medial collateral branches. They go in the medial plane in the middle of the brachial artery and the radial collateral artery. Now the medial collateral branches would be given off as we come down. They will be given off interosseous arteries, as we will see in the further, as we have seen the fate of the collateral arteries or the collateral branches. They always terminate in the recurrent branches, or the branches turning on themselves in 180 degrees. Now fortunately, on the radial side of the deep brachial artery, or the profunda brachii, or the deep brachial artery, we don't see two of branches. We only have the radial collateral branch here. So there will be only one naming, which will be radial recurrent artery, fortunately, because we have seen in the ulnar collateral branches, we have seen on the brachial side, on the ulnar collateral arteries, we have seen there was something called superior and inferior ulnar collateral artery, and the superior ulnar collateral artery, when turned back on itself, goes to the posterior aspect, but the inferior ulnar collateral goes to the anterior aspect. This is very funny, because superior is supposed to go in the anterior, but it does not go in the anterior. Why? Because it turned 180 degrees. When we talk about the bifurcation of the brachial artery, we see that they bifurcate in two parts. First part is the radial artery, and the other is ulnar artery. Now between radius and ulna there is called an interosseous membrane. Now the interosseous membrane will also need blood supply, because there are attachment sites of muscles and very important movement related muscles in that. So it will need something called an interosseous artery. For that matter, coming off of ulnar artery, we also have something called the common interosseous artery. We have seen that the ulnar artery comes off a bifurcation of the brachial artery or the arteriae brachialis. Now we will see that in the adjacent region of the ulna, in the ulnar artery and adjacent in between the ulnar and radial artery, but coming off of the ulnar artery itself, it will not come off radial artery, because radial artery is engaged with the radial recurrent artery and the medial collateral artery coming off of the deep brachial artery or the profunda brachii. Now the radial artery will definitely give something called the interosseous collateral, but we are going to talk a little bit later about that, because now we have to talk about the common interosseous arteries, which comes off of ulnar artery, off of bifurcation from the brachial artery. Now when we talk about common interosseous arteries, we must see that there are very important muscles, so in the back and in the front also. So for the muscles who have attachment sites in the interosseous membrane or near the interosseous membrane between radius and ulna, they will be supplied by posterior interosseous artery, and with the muscles which are in the front part would be supplied by the anterior interosseous artery. Now there's something called interosseous recurrent artery. Now this is very funny, because there is one muscle called Angiology muscle, which is just in the elbow region, and that's where the supply of interosseous recurrent artery, or the artery between the radius and ulna, but they supply where we fix our hands and put on the table like that. So that's where the Angiology muscles is, and that's where we need something called the interosseous recurrent artery, the artery that turns 180 degree on itself. That's the last place expected the arteries to be turning back, but that happens because we need to fix our elbows. Without that,